2022. I am calling this meeting to order. The time is now 6:30. Please stand and join me for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so this meeting is being conducted pursuant to the provisions of Government Code Section 54953 Subdivision E and the recommendation of the Ventura County Health Officer issued September 21st, 2021, following social distancing recommendations and the determination most recently by the City Council on February 22nd, 2022. The public was informed in advance of the meeting how to submit all public comments to our city clerk, and all submissions will be read into and part of the official meeting record. Live participation is accessed through the meeting Zoom link published on the agenda, and we highly encourage and welcome the community's participation. Those attending will have multiple opportunities throughout the meeting to provide public comments. All members are asked to keep their microphones muted unless actively speaking. Madam Clerk, will you please take roll call?
Councilmember Gama.
Here.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Here.
Councilmember Perez. Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
Present.
Mayor Rollins.
Here.
All present.
Okay, tonight's inspiration is from Councilmember Hernandez. Can you please give us the inspiration for the evening?
I'm happy to, Mayor Rollins. Thank you so much. I just want to share a thank you to our staff who took the initiative and decided to create blue and yellow lights on our city hall in support of the people in Ukraine. I don't know who did it. I was a week late in asking for it because it had already been done. But, this is what we really need to do, and that is act with forethought and take action, to support the people in Ukraine. And I just want to say thank you to the staff who thought about that. This invasion has been really hard to watch. And I just want to encourage everybody to not turn away, but to take action and do what you can possibly do within your own realm and support the people in Ukraine. So thank you to staff for doing that. I haven't been able to see the blue and yellow lights myself, but I hope to get out there one evening and indeed see that. So thank you so much. That concludes my inspiration.
No, thank you for an excellent inspiration and timely. We will now hear any general public comments not pertaining to items on the agenda, including those written comments received by our city clerk. Any comments from those who are participating live with us this evening, we like to ask that you use the Zoom raise your hand feature so that we can call on you during the appropriate comment times. This will be the same process for comments pertaining to each agenda item as well. Staff will unmute your mic and you will have up to 3 minutes to provide your comments. Does anyone have any public comments tonight? Madam Clerk, do we have any written ones at this point?
Mayor, we do have 2 public comment for general comment session, and I'll read both of them.
Thank you.
The residents of the Port Hueneme City Council. The residents of the Volker Park neighborhood have been asking for help with the dangerous traffic conditions that exist there for some time. People living in the Volker Park neighborhood and Hueneme Bay have repeatedly spoken at council meetings. Petitions have been presented to the council and nothing has changed. We need help. There are two ways to exit the area. One is problematic and the other is dangerous. The intersection of Bolker and Channel Islands Boulevard is scary. Traffic collisions occur there on a regular basis. Multiple traffic accidents have occurred there in the last couple of years. Every couple of weeks, there is another one. People attempting to turn left from Bolker Drive onto the eastbound lanes of Channel Islands Boulevard risk getting into a collision every time they leave the neighborhood. To exit Bolker and enter eastbound Channel Islands Boulevard, drivers must wait until is a break in traffic on the westbound lanes to cross Channel Islands Boulevard and stop on the small area covering the drainage ditch and wait again until the eastbound lanes are clear. In the meantime, drivers who are traveling east on Channel Islands Boulevard are waiting on the bridge to either cross the westbound lanes or make a U-turn and head west on Channel Islands Boulevard. These drivers may or may not have engaged their blinkers, and many of the drivers intending to travel across Channel Islands Boulevard onto Bolker still have their turn signals engaged. There is no way to tell what the drivers waiting on the bridge are going to do. Additionally, a minority of the drivers waiting on the bridge get frustrated, don't wait their turn, and pull in front of drivers who have the right of way. Many bicyclists traveling east in the westbound bike path, essentially going the wrong way, are difficult to see. When the traffic light at Patterson is red, cars stack up and many drivers stop in the middle of the intersection, making it impossible to cross Channel Islands Boulevard. If a train has blocked Channel Islands Boulevard, it can take 20 minutes for traffic to clear enough to make it a left-hand turn. I have a safe driving record and to date have never been involved in an at-fault collision. Over the last couple of years, I've experienced several near collisions at that intersection. There are several steps that the city can take to eliminate most of these issues. Number one, post a no U-turn sign at Channel Islands Boulevard and Bolker. 2, paint do not block intersection. 3, install a traffic signal at Channel Islands Boulevard and Lido with a U-turn option. The other way out of the neighborhood is to exit onto Hemlock. There is a large home surrounded by a small hill and vegetation that makes it impossible to view traffic heading westbound on Hemlock. No problem making a right-hand turn, but turning left is problematic. Thank you, David Scribner.
Okay. And you have another public comment?
Yes, I have the second one here. I found the parking and citation presentation from the last city council meeting to be an us versus them presentation, city staff versus the residents. I also found that the information presented in the presentation was selective and was intentionally presented to discredit the residents of Port Hueneme, thus misleading the city council by not including information that supported the residents' concerns. At one point in the presentation, the question that was called a myth by Tony Stewart was, why can't parking enforcement focus on patrolling the paid parking areas in the city? Tony Stewart said that was a myth and that all areas of the city are enforced, not just one particular area. Later in the meeting, Councilmember Gama asked for the number of the tickets issued for street sweeping and beach parking permit violations. It was found that almost 11 times as many tickets are issued for street sweeping than beach parking. 9,631 tickets were issued for street sweeping. 879 tickets were issued for beach parking without a permit in 2021. There are 3 days of the week in which street sweeping is conducted in Port Hueneme, 156 days of the year, meaning that 61 tickets are issued on average each day of street sweeping. Beach parking is year-round in general, so an average 2.5 tickets are issued each day for beach permits. This information was not included in the presentation. Why? I find this information to be very important and suggests that residents are being selectively cited. It was also discussed in the last city council meeting that parking enforcement at the beach was not being done regularly on weekends because of staffing. To me, that seems like the residents are being targeted while visitors to the beach are getting free passes due to lack of enforcement at the beach. If only 2.5 tickets are currently being issued for beach parking violations, why do we need to hire another parking enforcement officer unless you believe that many beach parking violations were overlooked in an effort to concentrate on street sweeping or other violations? Another issue that wasn't even discussed was the practice of drive-by ticketing, the practice of citing vehicles without leaving a ticket at the time of citation. Thus, the recipient gets a ticket in the mail 1 to 2 weeks later, making it challenging to dispute or confirm the ticket's validity and providing the recipient less time to challenge or pay the citation. The reason I was given was to avoid conflict with the parking enforcement officer. I believe the leadership decisions of prioritizing citing residents and drive-by ticketing have unfairly given our parking enforcement officers a bad reputation when she is literally doing as she is instructed and bears the burden. Let's enforce the laws equally, respect our residents' concerns, patrol the beach daily, and not prioritize targeting our residents, please. Thank you for your time. Ricardo Holden.
Are there any people in the public that wish to speak tonight?
If members of the public would like to speak on this item now or during general comment, now is the time.
Okay, it appears as though we have a Stephen Placio that wishes to speak, at least on my screen here. Can we allow that person to speak?
Yes, sir. Feel free to unmute your mic and begin your public comment.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Good.
Good. All right. So I think it's a great idea to change the name of Port Hueneme. I moved up here 42 years ago and lived behind the lobster trap at the end of Peninsula. And then after 6 months, moved up to Ventura for 3 years and then moved back to LA and had never heard of Port Hueneme.
Sir, if I can just interrupt you. Mayor, if you want to take this public comment right now, that's absolutely fine. But I will note that we have an item on our agenda which addresses this, and it may be best suited that we receive the public comment at that time.
Okay, I'll leave it up to Mr. Placio. We're going to be discussing this later on tonight. If you'd like to hold your comments to when the agenda item is discussed, we can, it may be more pertinent at the time. Or you can finish right now.
No, Rich, that's fine. I'll wait.
Okay, very good. Okay. May I have a motion? Are there any other, there is another, I'm sorry, we have Mr. Marquez wishing to speak. Mr. Marquez, can you unmute your mic?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. So, hello City Council. My public comment concerns California native trees and why our city should plant more of them. Native trees have many benefits. They're drought tolerant, attractive, ecologically beneficial, give a sense of place and community, and are culturally important. And best of all, they are not hazardous to human health or safety, unlike coral trees or eucalyptus trees. Next slide. Unfortunately, our current city's plant palette only has 9 native plants out of all the 88. That's just 10%. And even then, only 1, the California sycamore, is used, and then only rarely. Next slide. So first, I will discuss plants that usually grow to tree proportions. The first is the California sycamore, or aliso in Spanish, and it's one of the few plants that the western swallowtail butterfly seen on the left can lay its eggs on, and is a very stately, upright tree. Next slide. Another shrub, which can be another tree, which usually starts off as a shrub but can be pruned into a tree, is the hollyleaf cherry, or isle in Spanish, and of course produces the famous cherry blossoms and cherry fruit, which is important for birds and other creatures. Next slide. Another shrub which can be pruned into a tree is toyon, or also known as hollyberry, which is what Hollywood is actually named after. And it produces during the winter bright red hollyberries, which are very important for birds. Next slide. And lastly is the California walnut, or nogal, which produces the famous walnuts, which are important for different mammals and also birds. Next slide. So native trees don't just have to be planted on their own. They can also be used for larger landscaping with other native plants, such as on the right with native oak and larger landscaping, but they can also be much smaller, such as on the left with the California sycamore in someone's backyard. And as you can see, native trees are also very dog friendly. Next slide. Thankfully, our city's recent Arbor Day event gives me hope that this is possible. So it gives us hope for the future. On the right side is a picture of the Arbor Day event with people from our city's public works and also City Council member Stephen Gama planting a California sycamore. And in the words of President Theodore Roosevelt, it is well that you should celebrate your Arbor Day thoughtfully, or within our lifetime, the nation's need of trees will become serious. A people without children would face a hopeless future, and a country without trees is almost as hopeless. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Okay, may I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda for tonight?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, will you please take a roll call vote?
Councilmember Gama,
Yes. Am I still showing sideways?
Yes, you are.
Okay, I'm
A new
trying.
look.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perez,
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Rollins.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
very good. So now we will move to the first of two presentations tonight. The first one is by Mr. Madelon, our Public Information Officer, a COVID-19 update.
Well, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, and staff. Welcome to the March installment of the COVID-19 presentation. And give me just a moment here to share my screen. And we'll go ahead and begin. I always ask and remind you if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, I'd be happy to address and answer them the best I can at the end of the presentation. And with that, let's hopefully break into some good news on the reporting numbers. So moving right into it, the last time that we spoke was February 7th in our meeting. And at that time, we had about 2.8 million people tested. And as of today's meeting, I was able to get the numbers a little bit sooner than I normally do. So these are the latest numbers released by the county as of 4:30 p.m. today. And we now have over 3 million people from the reporting period now tested total in the county. Our positive tests are at about 172,000 cases. Our deaths in the county are up to 1,457 from the 1,322 mark in February. In our ICUs, we have 5 people. That is a significant downturn from the 35 that were there a month ago. So that is really good news. And the total in Port Hueneme went from just about 4,900 to now 5,100. Deaths in Port Hueneme residents unfortunately did go up from 36 to 38. However, our active cases in Port Hueneme as of today are 10. In our last reporting period, it was 224. So as you can see on this slide, if you look on the top left part of your screen, you're going to see this number right here at 108. This is our 7-day average case rate per 100,000. If we look at that same number here as of today, we're down to 5.4. Our 7-day PCR testing positivity rate was at 14% last reporting period. We are now down to 1.6%. And our health equity 7-day PCR testing rate, 34%. We're now down to 3%. We have a total of 29 in the hospital. And again, from the last slide, 10 of those are in ICU. And a 7-day average tests per 100,000, we're doing about 416. So as you can see on this graph, clearly a decline in the number of cases through the county. As everybody is aware, when I do these presentations, I like historical data, and I always use the same basis slide, which was taken March 12th in 2021 when we were using the colored tier system. And again, at that time, we were also faced with both the COVID-19 original virus, always called the novel virus, and also the Delta variant, which both had much more significant health related disease than the Omicron variant. And at that time, we were at 9.1. And again, as of today, it's 5.4. So we are lower today than we were back in the reporting period in March of 2021, literally almost a year ago, actually a little over a year ago. If we look at again, we're at 1.6 on our positivity rate. At that time, we were 3.5, so we would be in the old yellow tier. And our equity health ratio, we're at 6.8 then, and we are down to 3.1. So again, just another way to demonstrate over historical time whether or not we were rising in our case or we are falling. And the good news is we are on the falling side of that curve. So again, vaccine and our vaccine dashboard, the goal had always been from the beginning that if we could get to 80%, we would be doing really well. And as of today, in this lower right-hand corner, we have hit for ages greater than 12 years old, we're at 80%. And if you include those who are 5 years or older, we're at 76%. So we are definitely going up, and this is then where we want to be. And this trend line, we want to kind of see it continue to get a little bit higher and a little bit higher and a little bit higher as each month passes. But the good news is, even with this past few weeks and months, when vaccination rates kind of held steady, we did see an increase as the Omicron variant came through and really affected many folks out there. So we want to encourage and continue to have our population make sure that they are both vaccinated and, as you'll see on the next couple of slides, if not boosted, please consider getting your booster. Now, when we take a look at how we are doing specifically here in Port Hueneme, our numbers have gone up slightly to 62% of our eligible population fully vaccinated. But if you compare that with the trend of how everybody else is doing in the county, we are still on the low side. And we talked about different reasons why that may be. And at this point in our COVID's journey, I would imagine that those who want to get vaccinated should and will be able to find their vaccine pretty much anywhere they can go in the county, including, you know, at the Vons and the local places, as well as we are continually inviting and allowing folks to come into the city with the vaccine clinics and doing pop-up events as well. And we're going to continue that as long as these organizations are willing to come out and support their efforts. All right, as we all know, the mask mandate has ended, but I do want to caution you on two things. One, it does not matter your vaccination status, as earlier in the month it did. But secondly, in all healthcare settings, per our state order, individuals are required to wear a mask regardless of their vaccination status. That's on the left-hand side of the screen. What I do want to point out on the right-hand side of the screen is something I think we all need to consider, and that is, although mask mandates have ended, it is still strongly recommended by the Department of Public Health that we continue to use masks while indoors and around large groups of folks. And the little quote at the bottom is from our leading health professional, Dr. Levin, of course, our health folks in the county. And if you see here, he mentions that although the mandate is lifted, he reminds us to take all appropriate cautions to prevent and protect the further spread of the virus. So with that, we'll go into the vaccine and the boosters, because we know that there's two really good ways to prevent COVID-19. One of them is to get vaccinated and boosted, and the other one is to wear a mask. So here is the rules for getting a booster. Anybody 12 and older is eligible. If it's been 5 months or more since you completed your dose of Pfizer, or 6 months since Moderna, you are eligible, as well as 2 months since your J&J vaccine. So boosters are available, they're plentiful, and they can be seeked at any of the 200 sites available in Ventura County. And all you have to do is go to the website on the bottom part of your screen, right here where it says myturn.ca.gov. And as we get towards the end of the presentation, I always like to touch on the unemployment rates. And I went ahead and took this press release and screenshotted it for you from the state of California's Employment Development Department. These stats were put out on March 11th, as you can see at the top of the screen here. And we are at about 4.7% of unemployment, up slightly from a revised 4.2 in December. So as you're going around town, you can clearly see that the help wanted signs are out. However, we are under that 5% that we were a little bit ago, and we are below the 8% that we were this time last year. So we want to continue to see the unemployment rate trend go down. And along with that, getting folks in and working is definitely something that is a priority for the county. And with that, I have some final thoughts. There's 4 bullet points here, and I'm going to address each one of these individually. Starting with the first one, it's the COVID-19 versus Delta variant versus Omicron, and then now there's a new subvariant, if you haven't heard of BA2. Those are now all out into the world. So I just wanted to touch a little bit on what the differences were and why we may have went from numbers that were acceptable at a rate during Delta variant, which are now more acceptable, even though their numbers are higher during Omicron, and what do we have looming in the background. So with COVID-19 and Delta variant, these two both were had a lot more ability to make folks sick. The likelihood of significant disease was much higher than it was with Omicron. Omicron, if you didn't know, the abbreviation for it was BA1. When Omicron hit, we knew that it was very, very transmissible, but the severity of the illness was much lower. In other words, when people got sick with Omicron, they didn't have nearly the negative symptoms as they did with either Delta or our first COVID-19 original disease. And secondly, when you look at Omicron versus BA2, this is significantly impacting areas of Asia and in Australia. They're starting to see it in Eastern Europe. And these numbers are extraordinarily high in those countries, with BA2 being the dominant strain. The report I read this morning was that about 30% of the cases in the United States lately have been this BA2 variant, but we haven't seen all of the high case rates associated with it as they have in the other countries. And the one thing I'll just caution you on, and of course in emergency management, we're always looking at the when, not the if, and preparing for the when. There is a chance, of course, with any variant that this could become highly transmissible here in the United States. The good news with this, though, is they aren't seeing the significant disease associated with it and the effects that had with the regular strand of COVID-19 or the Delta variant. So it appears as if the symptomologies aren't nearly as severe as they were with the original or Delta variant, but we do need to consider precautionary measures so that this doesn't become an Omicron several weeks or months from now. Now I'm going to tie into natural immunity versus vaccine immunity. This one, I just want to preface that I do not have credentials as a medical expert. However, I'm just simply reporting a bit of facts about each one and what each has to offer. This is no means a long-term discussion about which is better or any sort of discussion about one or the other, simply just information. It was thought that a natural immunity existed in the different variants of COVID. I think many of us know somebody who has had COVID, either the Delta variant or the beginnings of COVID novel virus, and they got healthy, and 30 days later, they got sick again. And that's because mostly it went from the Delta variant to the Omicron, and it was possible for you to get sick with either or both of them. I personally know 2 people who had Delta, they recovered, and within 30 days, they were sick again and tested for Omicron. So the natural immunity is an interesting topic in and of itself. along with vaccine immunity. And if you ask me what's the real difference, this would go into several hours of discussion, which we don't have tonight, about each person's immune system. And I think the analogy is this: there's billions of people on the planet, and every single person is born with a unique fingerprint. Kind of same thing exists in the in your defense against illness, is our immune systems are also unique. And there are so many factors that play into whether or not somebody who gets COVID, who recovers, will never get it again. Maybe they get it again in 6 months. Maybe they have immunity that only lasts 3 days. It's so varied that it's unpredictable. When you talk about vaccine immunity, we talk about predictability. Scientists, virologists, medical experts in general will often agree about how long your immunity lasts for. And what we see in the public is that you got your original vaccine, you got your second dose, you got your third dose as your booster. And if you haven't heard the news lately, there is looking like there's an option now for a fourth dose for those who are immunocompromised or have significant risk factors that would create an adverse effect. They're looking at now getting approval for that fourth dose. So why? Well, what they know is it's predictable. They know that within about a 6-month window that your immunity is weaning a certain percentage, whether that goes from 90% to 60% to 40%. It's predictable, and they know how to boost it back up. Whereas your natural immunity may or may not do the same thing depending on what your unique immune system is doing as a result of being infected with COVID. So without getting into a long dissertation about how the white blood cells work, your T cells, and a bunch of other cells that I can't pronounce, I think it's simple enough to say that when you're looking at natural immunity versus vaccine immunity, what you're really looking at is predictability and the ability to fight off severe illness as a result of getting COVID, whether it's Omicron or any of the other variants. So this next one, the state of emergency of California, will it end? If you've been looking in the news lately, the question has been brought up that this is 2 years now of the governor being in a state of emergency for California. I don't have an answer on will end, whereas I don't think any others do. The point of putting it on there is recognizing that although numbers are down, they're trending in the absolute correct direction. The state of California still is under a declared state of emergency from the governor, and I don't have an answer on when it will end, but it does continue, and we do have to consider making sure that we are creating a safe environment for everybody to live in. And that means masks, boosting, distancing ourselves when possible, and continuing on with all of the good health habits that we've all acquired over this last couple of years. And finally, just bringing it back home, what is the local recommendations? What's happening currently? So currently, even though the mask mandate has lifted, as you saw on the earlier slide, it is still under the local guidance to strongly recommend encouraging all precautionary measures necessary to make sure that COVID-19 does not spread, including vaccines, mask wearing, distancing when possible, and doing all of those hygienic things that we've talked about. So although we are trending in the right direction, I just want to stress and continue that we all do our part to make sure it stays that way and that we can limit our exposure to any sort of variant that may and will eventually surface, and to continue with these good, healthy practices. So in conclusion, I am really excited to be able to bring you the good news that our numbers are coming down. But again, as your emergency preparedness manager, I'm always looking at a few steps down the road, and just want to advise you that there are steps that we can take to continue this healthy trend downward. So with that, I would entertain any questions that you may have in my presentation.
Well, thank you, Scott, for the in-depth report. A little positive information, which is a good thing. Before we go into city council comments, I forgot to, are there any public comments on this particular subject? Madam Clerk.
I do not have any written public comments for this item.
Do we have any in-person comments on this subject? Okay, well, hearing none, we will now move to council comments and questions. Councilperson Perez, you are.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Madelon, for the presentation. I heard in a previous meeting, and there were no details given, so that there were 2 other variants going through Asia right now. Are those already accounted for in your presentation, or have you heard of any other variants that might be out there that we haven't seen hit the United States yet?
Yes, one of them was mentioned. It was the BA2. That has been the predominant strain in Asia and starting up in the Mediterranean areas, Eastern Europe. There is an additional one, and I don't know that the phrase or the name has been coined, but I hear that they keep calling it the Deltacron. There's not a lot of information out there on it yet, but it has been on the radar. I don't know of any cases in the United States where it's actually surfaced yet, but that is another variant that's out there that does potentially cause us to, I wouldn't say worry, but at least put some potential looks at how we're going to defend ourselves against that. So yes, there are 2. And there could be more.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor Rollins, and thank you, Scott, for the presentation. I wanted to know if you know if we still need a vaccine or negative test to travel, whether it's within the United States or international.
Yeah, I don't have the answer as far as international travel. I think I would just check with the airlines and see what they're recommending at the time. I do know that most of the airlines are still requiring masks at all times, but I'd have to check on what the vaccine statuses are because I don't know those off the top of my head.
All right, thank you, Scott.
Sure.
Scott, I just had a couple of questions. I know that they're going to be having a 4th booster, and you may or may not know it. Is this taking into account all these new variants? And most likely, will there be a 5th booster if that came around?
Sure, I don't have an answer on the 5th booster. On the 4th booster, without getting too much into the weeds of the medical science on that, just understand that when the original vaccine came out, it was against novel coronavirus. And at that time, it mutated to Delta and then Omicron. At this point in the game, those mutations are over 52 different variations. And the vaccine originally was derived to stop significant illness. It didn't necessarily mean you weren't going to get COVID. It's just stopping you from severe illness, hospitalization, or death, right? So as the 4th vaccine gets rolled out, what that one is specifically for right now is those who are extraordinarily high risk, those who have cancer, organ transplants, things of that nature, to boost those T cells and all of the other ones that I can't pronounce up. What we do know is that over time, whether it's natural immunity or vaccine immunity, it fades. And the concept is until there is a long-term solution that to protect as many people as possible, they know at about a 6-month mark, they're looking to see how and what percentage of those cells have decreased so they can boost them back up again. As of right now, though, there is not a 4th booster for the general population on the table right now. What is on the table is that 4th booster for those significant folks who are in those high risk tiers.
Again, you may not have the exact answer to this, but I know over the course of years, about each year I have to take a new flu shot because there's new variants that come about. And I've had to take multiple pneumonia shots because I guess there are variants to that. Is the science similar to this with the COVID that, you know, as the different boosters come in, they're trying to take account for mutations or variants or whatever you might call it?
Yeah, I don't have any specific knowledge on how they're developing it or what it will look like long term. I think what is important is for our public to realize that as the immunity wanes, we're going to have to do what we need to do to put that back, which in this particular case is a booster.
Okay, thank you very much for the report.
Sure.
I see no other, oh, I do see one comment. Councilperson Hernandez.
I did it again. Thank you, Mr. Madelon, for your presentation. I was wondering if there were any policy changes on mask wearing and social distancing established for City Hall and other city facilities.
Sure. Our guidance is updated with state and local guidance as necessary. Inside our working conditions here in City Hall, masks are optional. There are individuals who feel more comfortable wearing a mask and social distancing, and there are some who don't participate in mask wearing, but that has now been left in alignment with the guidance that's out for each individual to make that decision.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, well, again, thank you for the report, and we will now move on to the second presentation, and that's the city name change process. And before we start, do we have any public comments tonight on this particular subject?
We do have one written public comment on this item, which I will read.
Okay.
I hope you will consider my comments on the name change of Port Hueneme to Hueneme Beach. My opinion is no. I grew up on 7th Street in Port Hueneme and am the daughter of Elaine and Dwayne Garber, who are now deceased. Although I no longer live there, I have deep roots, as does my family. My mother served 50 years on the Hueneme School District Board and was a lead in a majority of Harbor Day activities. In 2016, she was honored with the People Who Make a Difference Award by the Port Hueneme Historical Society. She was also the recipient of the 1989 Leo J. Ramirez Citizen of the Year Award. If she were alive, she would be the first person to be at the hearing to vote a resounding no on the name change. The city of Port Hueneme is rich in history, as is its name. I see no plausible reason to change the name of the city. It should remain the city of Port Hueneme and the beach to remain Hueneme Beach. Thank you for your consideration. Lydia Garber Stevenson.
Earlier tonight, I think we had the person there was a person that wanted to speak on that in person. Is that person still there?
Yes, we have one comment.
Okay. Can we hear that at this point or have them unmute their mic?
Are you guys referring to me?
We are referring to you, Mr. Placehill.
Well, I can't compete with that. I've only been here 10 years and I'm just thinking about the city's sustainability. And when I first moved here, I was told not to move here from the past history of the rumors that have been around the city of Port Hueneme. And I just think that progress is something that we need to go with. And the Hueneme Beach seems to be a really great name. And that'd be great to have for the 75th anniversary.
Okay. Well, thank you. We don't make any comments on individual comments at this point in time, but thank you for making your presentation. We will now have Mr. Kinney give us the report.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Again, loud and clear.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, then. Good evening. This is actually going to be a very brief presentation to you tonight because it's really intended just to set the stage and create the framework for the real event, which will be the special meeting this Friday afternoon, which is the public hearing on the merits of the name change. So the discussion tonight is not about pros and cons of the name. I just want to make sure that you're well aware of the process that has occurred and that we still have to go through in order to satisfy the legal requirements facing us. So we can press ahead. So I think this really started sort of officially back in October of 2020 when the council adopted the strategic plan after community input, because one of the initiatives in it under fiscal excellence, I believe it was to explore the value of city rebranding as a strategy to attract tourism and increase economic investment. So from there, we started to look at the merits of the city name, either changing it or leaving it the same, as one of the tools towards promoting that strategy that was approved in the strategic plan. So the next step was to do some research into kind of the practical, everyday effects of a potential name change, both on the city as an organization and on the individuals and businesses that comprise our community. So we put that information together and presented it to the council in July of last year. And following that discussion, then the council authorized to begin the actual process, which leads to a vote in November of this year on the general election. There would be a ballot measure for residents to vote on a name change to Hueneme Beach. Okay, next. So the name of the city is mentioned in the city's charter. Because of that, if there were to be a name change, it would constitute a charter amendment. And so we have to be guided by the state law on how one goes about making such a charter amendment. And the requirements are very specific, and they're noticed here. There have to be 2 public hearings. They have to be at least a month apart. Then the council vote on whether to authorize the ballot measure has to be at least 3 weeks after the second public hearing. But it can't be later than the days leading up to May the 20th, because if the ballot measure is to go on the ballot, it has to get to the county by that date, May the 20th. Then the normal processes related to campaigns and elections occur leading up to a vote on November the 8th. And this is the time when the residents vote their preference. It's just a simple up or down, yes or no. And it's only if a majority of residents vote yes that the name could be changed. If that occurs, if there is a yes outcome from that, then it kind of devolves back to the city council to really decide how that's going to be rolled out in the community. And I think a natural idea would be to point toward March 24th, a year from now, which would be the official celebration of the city's 75th anniversary. And that would also allow time from the knowledge that the city name change was going to occur to sort of prepare for the various impacts that would take place. Okay, next. So speaking specifically about this Friday's public hearing. Notice has been posted for 3 weeks as required by the state. With Scott's help, social media notice was distributed last week. That's gone. That information is gone on the city website as well. When the meeting occurs this Friday at 4 o'clock, I think our intention is to open it with a staff presentation about the benefits and costs, very similar to the same one that we gave to you, the council, last July, to try and highlight impacts, both positive and negative, that people should be aware of in reaching their own judgment on the name change. So your role this Friday is simply to receive public comments. There's no action put before you, no action asked for, and none to be taken. That would happen, as you see. There'll be another similar public hearing a month from now, on April 25th, and then finally on May 16th, that's your regular council meeting. That's when the issue will be before you for action, and that issue will be whether or not to put the ballot measure on the November ballot so that people can make their choice. All right. Next slide. And as promised, this is a brief presentation. That's kind of nuts and bolts of where we are right now, what you can look forward to on Friday, and where that fits into the whole process. So I leave it now to any questions that you might have.
So you want questions regarding the process, not the details today, or?
Correct.
Okay. So Councilperson Gama. You're sideways again.
I'm going to stick with my photo. I'm sorry. So with regards to the process, is this going to be at City Hall? Is it going to be Zoom? Is it going to be in person? What's the role of the City Council? Are we required to attend? Because I'm a little unclear on those matters.
Okay, I think the city attorney will address that in a little bit. I think the public notice was crafted so as to allow for either form of meeting, either live or Zoom. But I think the intention and the recommendation is for it to be a Zoom meeting this Friday.
Yeah, Councilmember Gama, I can comment a little bit further on that. Because the lead times on the notice for the charter amendment state that the notice has to be posted 21 days in advance of the hearing, it was opted to place the March 25th meeting via Zoom. With respect to my later announcement, I'm going to have a recommendation with respect to what we do to handle this March 25th meeting, whichever way the council decides with respect to AB 361.
Kevin, can you clarify that a little bit more?
Does that mean that there is a possibility it will be an in-person meeting?
I would strongly recommend against it just because the 21 days notice has already been provided, and changing it now would subject the entire ballot measure to challenge.
Okay. Councilperson Perez.
Yeah, I wanted to know how our participation is in this type of public meeting. Will we be allowed to engage and discuss with community members? Are we to stay silent? What is our role on that day?
I'd defer to Kevin for the last word. I think it's a public hearing like in any other public hearing. So that there are no specific prohibitions or restrictions because of the charter amendment nature or anything else.
That's correct. The public hearing rules would apply, which the council should remember is the council will be sitting in essentially a quasi-legislative, quasi-judicial capacity. And what this means is that you're going to be charged with taking evidence and essentially supporting any decision to place this measure on the ballot by substantial evidence, like any other decision from a local agency. So this should be fairly interactive with the council and the public.
Councilperson Hernandez.
Thank you, Mayor. With regard to the process, what will staff be doing over the course of these two public hearings and November to demonstrate that things will be different with a name change? I mean, will staff be looking at improving our permit process? Will they be looking at the fact that we have no service clubs in Port Hueneme? We don't have a chamber of commerce. We don't have a newspaper, signage on Highway 1 or 101. Are we going to be doing anything to address what I consider low-hanging fruit to demonstrate that there will be a difference at the end of this process?
I think our intention is to make the case for overall improvements to the community as being going hand in hand with a name change. As to say, not just changing the name and everything else is business as usual. There are a lot of changes for the positive that are happening in the community, and that would certainly be a part of the discussion.
Okay.
And I also have to interject here, considering that this is a ballot measure, I'm not sure who was around, if any of you, during Measure U. Local agencies and cities are prohibited by law from engaging in advocacy. We can be information only. So the city has to be neutral, cannot push one way or the other, cannot engage in any advocacy at all. However, the city council may take an official position, and individual council members, when speaking in their individual capacities, are not so constrained.
If I may, Mayor, as City Manager Connors, in portion to address some of those points, all those items mentioned are really in work to some state of maturity, independent of the city name change public hearings. And so all of those are part of economic development and replacing some of these missing normal activities within our community with other things. So those things will still go on independent of the name change.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I had just one key comment, and that is, I know you touched base on, we made some official announcement, and it's been on social media for such a big issue. And then hearing it on a lot of social media and comments that I've heard within the community. Are there any other methods that you're going to be using to kind of get the word out so that we have a robust conversation from all levels on Friday?
Well, sure. I think the thrust of the efforts to get to the community will really take place over the course of the next weeks and months. And the reason that works is, there's no decision to be made this Friday. There's no decision to be made a month from this Friday. And even in May, the decision you'll be asked to make then is not whether to change the name or not. It's just whether to put it on the ballot so that the residents will make that decision in November. So really all the conversations that pertain to the pros and cons and to try and educate people as best as possible, that can take place over the course of the spring and the summer and even into the fall.
I would just comment that, while I would hope that we really get the word out as well as possible. Oftentimes I'll hear that I didn't hear about it, and no matter what you do, some people will never hear about it. But I would like to see a plethora of people do know about it in whatever way staff can figure out to do that. The other question is just on procedure. Is this a special meeting that we conduct like a normal city council meeting? Or I know I've been to, in the past when they had discussion on the water, where we were kind of passively listening to it and, not necessarily making comments, but listening to the general public make their comments. Will this be conducted like a regular meeting where, I guess that I recognize people to speak, or will there be another moderator? I haven't been fully kind of given that information at this point.
Mayor Rollins, perhaps I can answer that. It will be handled like a normal public hearing item. The mayor doesn't forfeit his role with respect to being the parliamentarian of the meetings, so the normal city council rules of procedure will continue to apply. The fundamental difference here is really going to be the level of interaction with the council and the members of the public, in that typically in a special meeting, city council is legally allowed to restrict all public comments to only the agenda items, as opposed to public comments regarding anything within the subject matter of the city jurisdiction. So unlike other items during a general meeting, the city council will have the opportunity to interact with the public, respond to comments, engage in dialogue, and determine what the best course of action is for the city. As well as get a proper gauge of public sentiment and see if this is something the public would be interested in pursuing.
So again, like, I guess this is more procedural, like and it may be getting too much into the details, like I would recognize John Doe, then make a statement, and then I'd see the council with their raised hands to respond to that individually, so we don't have a free-for-all, or especially on Zoom per se.
That's correct. The mayor would be the parliamentarian still and would conduct the meeting appropriately.
Okay, great. Do we have any other?
There's city manager Connors. I just have one comment with regard to I think a couple of questions that were asked about outreach. As part of this process, we are coordinating outreach and messaging in alignment with the city attorney's statement about information, so that we can engage the most people directly, address their questions, and allow them the opportunity to get into some of the details with staff as we work through this period of 2.5 months of public hearings and review of this particular option. So there will be planned outreach within the process timelines that we talked about.
And another point that was just briefly made, as far as like the council individually can obviously voice their individual pros and cons to this. Will they be able to do that as part of the public hearing, or will that happen later on?
But defer to the city attorney, but in your personal role, as opposed to your elected role, you are a citizen that is free to engage in that process as well.
Okay.
Is that correct, Mr.
That's correct. The only distinction I would make is that when council members are voicing their own opinions, even at the public hearing, I would identify that is my own opinion rather than speaking as the council.
Okay. And I've spurred other questions. Councilperson Gama.
Thank you, Mayor Rollins. What about data? It's my understanding that there's survey data and there's some data to share. Is that going to be a part of the presentation?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And that data was collected when?
That is from the Hueneme Beach Festival last summer. It's actually a survey that we structured to be used in any setting in a multitude of ways, but it sort of rolled out at Beach Festival weekend. And it will also be a part of probably the presentations and community outreach that we make later on as well.
Was there a survey conducted in the strategic plan and or the master plan?
If I may address a question, Steve, thank you,
Please.
Councilman Gama. Actually, there's 3 different versions of basically the same question. In the general planning process, there was a survey where this issue was measured, In the Parks and Master Planning process, there was not additional survey. And in the strategic planning process, there was also a survey that we have data on. Based on the data, the findings have significant value for the discussion. So that data will be available in the presentation that Steve will present during the public hearing.
Councilperson Perez.
Yes, I also wanted to make mention some time ago, and I don't know if everyone participated, but we had a presentation given by the editor of Visit Ventura magazine, I believe. And I asked specific questions about a name change and whether or not that would be financially beneficial to the city. And there was some information that he gave on that. Do you have that available and can make that present?
Yes, I think you're referring to Brian Tucker, who is the head of the West County marketing group.
Yes.
Yes, I'll have that.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to this Friday meeting. And at this time, we're going to move on to the consent. Oh, we have one more comment. Okay. You got me before I moved on to the consent agenda. Councilperson Gama.
Yes, I'm still sideways. Thank you. So my concern is that we do outreach in such a way that so we get a really good turnout. And the Zoom format, I'm not excited about. But my concern is that what if one side or the other mobilizes and has turnout, and then we get an impression that, oh, nobody's for it, and then or everybody's for it, but again, we just concerned that one side or the other is going to dominate these public hearings. And so, putting it out on social media one time and then doing it by Zoom, I'm just a little uncomfortable with that. So I just wanted to get that on the record.
Yeah.
Keep in mind too, Mr. Gama, that there will be a second public hearing very similar to this Friday's format that will be a month later.
Yeah, I guess I would just reiterate, that there's multiple ways to get out to the public, social media being one, but even old school flyers and posters and things like that at the places that people go to on a regular basis, so that we have an accurate understanding of the total community. Just a suggestion.
And just, I have one more comment. Can we have additional public hearing meetings, or are we only able to do the two? Could we do a third? Could we really make it have more public hearings than just the two?
I think there's a timeline, Mr. Connors.
Well,
Yeah,
I believe the state only mandates the minimum. And after that, it's up to your discretion, but I'd defer to the city attorney.
That's correct. The state establishes the floor, not the ceiling. It would be conceivably possible to have 3 or 4 public hearings. The real issue that we run into here is the significant time crunch to get a ballot measure on the ballot. It's not a small undertaking, and deadlines are approaching fairly quickly.
But if we decided to have multiple public hearings, more than 2, I mean, it's just a matter of having a 72-hour notice for the meeting. I mean, we could have 2 in 1 week if we wanted to, correct?
Probably not under the charter amendment regime, in that each hearing requires 21 days notice. And I believe that there is 14 days between the meetings. This was all timed out in order to make the deadlines for the ballot measure.
Well, okay, I just feel like we're rushing into this, and anyways, that's all I have to say.
If I may ask a question, the city attorney, that is just to get it on the ballot, but there could be meetings beyond that timeframe, although they don't necessarily apply to actually getting on the ballot, but more informational than other forms of meetings. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, I believe that could take place so long as it's understood that at the third meeting, when the resolution is passed, that measure goes to the ballot. Nothing should change that.
Councilperson Hernandez.
It's a quick question. Will there be Spanish interpretation at these public hearings? Will we be offering this information in Spanish?
I don't know the answer to that right now.
Okay, I hope so.
Okay.
I have, it appears to be, I have a, I'm sorry, Councilperson Hernandez, do you have any other questions?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. It appears as though I have a couple raised hands for public comments. I want to take them. I see a Lauren's iPhone. I'm not sure if that's about this subject or not.
Oh, it is. Thank you. In regards to the public hearing on Friday, you said, how do you voice your opinion if you don't really want to make a comment during the hearing? Like, is there going to be a vote at the end, like for or against, and then just to get a general sense? How does that work?
No, I think it's just public comment. You're able to, on Zoom, make your public comment. For that matter, you're probably able to write a letter. I think that might be heard that day too. Am I correct? Or wrong?
That's correct, Mayor. The posted agenda will provide the instructions by which people can make public comment, which will include the submission of written comments or attendance at the hearing and making verbal comments at that time.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Lauren?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. And it appears though I have one from Mr. Marquez. Mr. Marquez, are you? Well, I guess no longer from Mr. Marquez. Now we have a comment from Chief Salinas. Is this on this particular issue? I see a raised hand. I'm not sure.
Was that question for me, sir?
No, I saw a raised hand on your particular hand. But I'm not sure why you would do that, but nonetheless, I saw a raised hand.
No raised hand.
Mayor, I'm scanning the participants in this meeting, and I don't currently see any raised hands.
Okay, I see one, but maybe I'm just saying things. Okay, so we're going to now move on to the consent agenda. I'm going to read the titles of the items of the consent agenda prior to the motion, and I'm going to read the recommendation. Just real quickly, Madam Clerk, do I go through all of these particular titles and then we get one vote, or do we do it individually? Just
You read all the titles, especially the resolutions and the ordinances that are on this list, and then you do one vote at the end.
okay, so I'm going to get a little drink so I can clear my throat. There's a lot to read. All righty. The number 3, approve the minutes of the City Council regular meeting, March 7th, 2022, and the special City Council meeting on March 3rd, 2022. The recommendation is to approve the regular and special meeting minutes. Number 4, receive and file the finance cash disbursements from March 1st, 2022 through March 14th, 2022. The recommendation is to receive and file the disbursements. Number 5, authorization to award a contract to JH Engineering, General Contractors Incorporated, to repair a cracked sewer line on Ventura Road near Surfside Road. The recommendation is to authorize the city manager to award the contract to J&H Engineering General Contractors Incorporated for the repair of a cracked sewer line located on Ventura Road between Surfside Drive and the railroad crossing on Ventura Road, as identified in the plan attached to this staff report. Further, request council appropriate the money for the repair from the wastewater reserve fund, since this is not a part of the CIP program. Number 6, second reading by title only, waiving full reading and the adoption of the ordinance amending Article 3 of the Municipal Code to supersede Ordinance 780, which comprises Chapter 12, to implement various laws of the state of California by allowing medicinal and non-medicinal and/or commercial cannabis facilities within the city, subject to the regulatory parameters that protect public health, safety, and welfare. The recommendation is to read by title only, waiving full reading of the ordinance, and adopt proposed ordinance amending the city medicinal and non-medicinal cannabis business regulations to add standards for cannabis lounges. Okay, we have, sure. Number 7, authorize the purchase of an automated side loader. The recommendation is to approve the purchase of one new Peterbilt 520 solid waste automated side loader in the amount of $347,021.01, and authorize staff to utilize the HGAC cooperative purchasing agreement to complete the purchase. May I have a motion and a second to approve our consent calendar?
Make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So we have a motion and a second.
I'll second.
Okay. Madam Clerk, will you please take a roll call vote?
Councilmember Gama,
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Rollins.
Yes.
Motion
Okay,
passes unanimously.
right. So now we're going to move on to public hearings. Number 8 on the agenda, the Bubbling Springs Natural Channel Vegetation Removal Project public hearing to receive comments on the draft IS-ND. The hearing is now opened at, let's see, 7:48. Do any members of the council have any conflicts to disclose? Seeing done, Madam Clerk, do you have a proof of publication as required by law?
Yes, we do.
Do we have a complete file of the reports and exhibits?
Yes, we do.
We will now hear from Charles Cable, Principal Engineer. Will staff give the report? I also see Mr. Villafano, so, but anyway, okay, so please give the report at this time.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, General Public, and staff. Today we have Annalisa Miller from Rincon Consultants. She'll be joining us to present on the Bubbling Springs Vegetation Removal Project. She will provide a brief update on the project and where we are at. Then we would like to move forward with the public hearing. Annalisa, you're up.
My screen with the presentation. Is everybody able to see that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Great. Well, thank you, City Council members, for having me here this evening to talk briefly about the CEQA process for the Bubbling Springs Natural Channel Vegetation Removal Project. As Charles mentioned, my name is Annalise Miller. I'm a senior environmental planner at Rincon Consultants, and I am our project manager on our end for the CEQA process for this project. So we have 3 project team members in attendance this evening. We have Charles Cable, Principal Engineer at the city, Don Villafana, Public Works Director at the city, as well as myself. I'm going to start by giving just a brief overview of the project, since I know the council is already aware of it, and I'll just provide the relevant details for the public to know. So the purpose of the project is to restore and maintain flow conveyance capacity in the Bubbling Springs Natural Channel, thereby reducing flood risk associated with vegetation overgrowth. The project site traverses 23 parcels within the Bubbling Springs Recreation Greenbelt between Bard Road in the north and the J Street Pump Station in the south. You can see the 2 graphics here on this slide depicting the extent of the project site along that linear corridor. The project involves the periodic removal of vegetation overgrowth, primarily cattails and bulrushes, for approximately 40 days per year using mechanized and hand equipment. The project does not include excavation of channel materials nor herbicide use. The project also does not require the removal of trees, shrubs, or woody vegetation. The project includes implementation of several best management practices, or BMPs, which I have listed on this slide and the following slide, that are included in the project to avoid and minimize the potential for environmental impacts. I'll briefly go through each one of these. BMP 1 includes general site maintenance measures for erosion control, waste management, and materials pollution. BMP 2 includes limitations on the scheduling and timing of work activities in an effort to avoid impacts to water quality and nesting birds during times when the drainage channel is flowing. BMP 3 includes a worker environmental awareness training specifically related to special status species, such as the western pond turtle, that are known to occur along the project site. BMP 4 includes pre-activity surveys for these special status species, along with nesting birds. BMP 5 includes the establishment of avoidance buffers around any nesting birds that are encountered during the pre-activity surveys. BMP 6 similarly includes the establishment of special status species buffers for any species encountered, such as the western pond turtle. BMP 7 includes measures for species capture and relocation of special and non-special status species only for those species for which it is appropriate to do so if they are encountered in the work area during project activities. BMP 8 includes biological monitoring of project activities in certain instances, again for special status species. BMP 9 includes measures to avoid the introduction of invasive species to the work area. BMP 10 includes stop work procedures in the event that archaeological or paleontological resources are encountered during project activities. And lastly, BMP 11 contains a couple of greenhouse gas emissions reduction measures that achieve project consistency with the climate action plan element of the city's 2045 general plan. So now that we've covered the project briefly, I'll go ahead and give an overview of the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, process. The purpose of CEQA is fourfold. It is to disclose the significant environmental effects of proposed projects, identify ways to avoid or reduce those environmental impacts, consider feasible alternatives to proposed actions, and enhance public participation in the planning process. This graphic depicts an overview of the CEQA process. So at the beginning, we prepare an initial study to evaluate the environmental effects of the project. Once that is prepared, the city publishes a notice of intent to adopt an initial study negative declaration, which has been done for this project. The reason why it's a negative declaration is that the initial study identified that no mitigation measures are needed for the project. At that point, the public review period initiates, which runs for a period of 30 days. During this time period, the public and other agencies may comment on the adequacy of the draft ISND. This is the step that we are currently in tonight. Once the public review period concludes, the final ISND is prepared, which includes any revisions or additions made in response to comments received during the public review period. From there, the city will make its CEQA findings and the city council will reach a decision on the project. At the city council meeting during which the project approval is considered, public comments can also be provided. Lastly, once the city makes a decision on the project, the notice of determination is filed with the county and the state. And then responsible and trustee agency decision-making bodies, such as for this project, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, are then able to consider the final ISND in their decision-making processes and make their own decisions and adopt their own notices of determination. Shown here is an overview of the 20 environmental resource topics typically covered in a CEQA document. These range from everything from biological and cultural resources to transportation, hazardous materials, hydrology, aesthetics, and air quality and greenhouse gas emissions. In the ISND, all impacts were determined to be less than significant for the project. So as I mentioned earlier, there was no mitigation proposed for project activities. The next steps in the CEQA process are shown on this slide. The public review of the ISND is ongoing through Monday, March 28th at 5:00 p.m. So comments may be submitted until that point. And then the City Council will consider the project for approval either in late spring or early summer of this year. So for anybody who is interested in reviewing the draft ISND, it is posted on the city's website in the Document Center at the link shown on this slide. It is also available as a hard copy, both at City Hall and at the Ray D. Pruder Library, and can be viewed during normal business hours. Tonight, members of the public may also provide verbal comments on the draft ISND. Commenters have 3 minutes to speak, and written comment letters as a follow-up are also encouraged. If a member of the public does choose to submit a written comment, they can be sent to Charles Cable, either via mail or email at the addresses shown on this slide. And lastly, I'll conclude just by noting that the City Council is not making a decision on the project tonight. Tonight is simply to receive comments from members of the public during the public hearing, and then the City Council's decision to adopt the ISND and approve the project will come at a later date. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the report, Ms. Miller. Do we have any public comments, Madam Clerk?
I have no written public comments for this item.
And I see no verbal ones, so we will move on to council questions. Oh, no, we do. I'm sorry. Mr. Marquez, you have a comment from the public.
Yes. So I wanted to start off by thanking everyone involved in this vegetation and weed removal project. For a while now, I myself have been advocating for the removal of the choking cattails and bulrushes and the maintenance of our local wetland. And I'm happy to see something at last being done. Even if it has been an inevitably slow process, hopefully once the paperwork is fully complete, and if it is complete, our city's public works will move at full steam and do the job well. I have read through the entire draft paper for this public hearing, and I agree with it entirely, especially making sure any breeding birds are not adversely affected in the process. Also, learning about the presence of native Western pond turtles is also exciting, as I myself have spent many hours working and in many ways living along the creek each week, had no idea of them being there. I truly hope this process is a huge success and is carried out in proper and timely manner. Also, I hope everyone involved makes sure to keep the city and its public posted on any updates and perhaps shares pictures of any wildlife seen. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marquez. Councilperson Gama.
Thank you, Mayor Rollins. Thank you, Jacob Marquez. And yes, I will see you at Bubbling Springs Park on Saturday to do that cleanup that you want to do. So I just want to make sure I heard something correctly. Did I hear that only 40 days per year can be worked on this project?
I would defer the response to that to Charles, but that is currently what is being evaluated in the draft ISND. And I believe that's also what is being applied for permitting from CDFW.
Because
Go ahead, Charles. Sorry.
Yes, we applied for 40 days. We have a certain amount of period that we can actually work within the creek, and that is from September. And Lisa, do you remember those dates? I have it in the staff report. 1 second.
Yes, I do. Between September 15th and December 31st, or whenever the majority of the channel is dry.
Right. So based on that restriction, we were able to go with 40 days.
And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because there's a lot of work to do. And so 40 days per year. So how much work are we gonna be able to get done in 40 days? And is it 40 business days, or is it cut out for weekends as well?
It's cut out for as long as the contract we get. So we intend to do as much as we can. And we think we can accomplish this within the 5-year period.
Yeah, so that's just a little disheartening for me, because we've been waiting for this for a very long time, and now the prospects that this project won't be completed for possibly 5 years. I guess that's the way of, I don't know what to say other than it's disappointing.
It is a routine maintenance agreement, so this is the only way we're able to secure an agreement with Fish and Wildlife to actually do the work.
If I may, it's a number of agencies are involved, Fish and Wildlife, the Coastal Commission. So it's a very complicated and time-consuming effort. And yes, it's a little frustrating, but these are the environmental regulations that we have to adhere to. And we're going to do our best to do as much clearing as possible during the times we're allotted.
Okay. I just had one, I guess, simple comment. And this would be to Ms. Miller. So the nesting birds and the turtles, so when they find them, what do they do with them?
That's a great question. So it depends on the species. So if it's a nesting bird, there's an avoidance buffer established around that nest. So that consists of flagging typically. And then construction personnel are asked to stay outside, or I guess city staff personnel in this case, are asked to stay outside that buffer until the nest has fledged and the nestlings are gone from the nest. If it's a Western pond turtle, there are provisions in which a qualified biologist is able to capture and relocate that turtle to a different location. Those locations would be identified ahead of time so that the biologist knows where to take that in an area that would not be affected by the project activities.
So will there be a biologist, like when the work's being done, kind of overseeing it all the time, or will they notify the biologist if they see something?
So there would be the pre-activity survey that would occur before project activities start, kind of like a clearance sweep of the area to make sure that there are no species there. If there are special status species there, that's when these other things are triggered, like the avoidance buffers. And then if there are special status species, there's also provision for a biological monitor to be present during the activities, specifically during vegetation removal.
Okay. And you mentioned something about greenhouse reduction. Is there going to be something, I didn't understand how this project affects that?
So the city's climate action plan element in the general plan includes policies related to solid waste disposal, as well as the use of electric powered mechanized hand tools. So the project includes 2 measures. One is that green waste generated by project activities shall be disposed of at a green waste processing facility as opposed to a landfill. And then electric powered mechanized hand tools shall be utilized where commercially available rather than gasoline or diesel powered mechanized hand tools.
We're going to thank you for the report. Let's see, we will now move on. Let's see. If there are no further discussions, we will close the public hearing, the time being 8:03. We have before us a recommendation, and the exact recommendation is that the city council open a public hearing, take testimony and documentary evidence, and close the public hearing and consider the evidence and take such additional related action that may be desired. May I have a motion and a second?
I'll move to receive and file.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. May we have a vote?
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perez,
Yes.
Councilmember Gama,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Rollins.
Yes. Thank you for the update and the report. We're going to move on to number 9. 2021 Annual General Plan and Housing Progress Report. Will staff please make the report?
Yes, good evening, Mayor, members of the council, public and staff. This is Tony Stewart, Community Development Director. And this is our annual general plan and housing element progress report. May I have the next slide, please? So this is a requirement per SB 35 and AB 879 that the city reports on at least the housing element and our progress towards meeting the goals within it on an annual basis. As a charter city, we don't have to report on the entire general plan. However, as a policy, we do so just for transparency. In addition to this particular report, we also have the annual successor agency report, which is required per Government Code 65400. And we must report what we have in this report to HCD and OPR by April 1st of each year. So that's why we have these meetings every March, so we can make sure that we get our information up to those state agencies. Next slide, please. Now, generally, every year the reports are pretty much the same with a few facts and figures changed. However, as you recall, just this past October, we adopted a brand new general plan and a housing element. And therefore, although there are some carryover goals, there are a lot of new ones that were also reported on this year. We also actually have a few brand new general plan elements, such as the social equity and climate action plan elements, as well as a substantially revised economic development element. The old element was done back during the days of redevelopment, but without redevelopment anymore, we needed to redo that. So some progress has been already made on goals in these elements, but we'll have a lot more to report on in the coming years, including a couple of items that were just mentioned in the last hearing item with regard to the climate action plan. Next slide, please. So with regard to the housing element itself, we also look at the ways that our regional housing needs allocation, or RHNA, is met each year. And we have a brand new RHNA that'll last for the next 8 years. Our old one we only had to construct 2 units. Actually, we only got one of those constructed. And this year it's increased, as you recall, up to 125 units that need to be planned for, not necessarily constructed, but planned for over the next 8 years. And the breakdown again of those is 21 extremely low and very low income units, 16 low income units, 18 moderate income, and then 65 market rate or above moderate income units that should be planned for and hopefully constructed during the time period. However, we're actually already well underway. Like I said, last time around, we could only report on 1 unit, and this time around, we can report on several new units. ADUs do apply and can be counted towards our RHNA. So with that, we have 3 new ADUs that have been completed. 4 more are currently under construction, and we have 7 more in plan check. And for the city's ADU ordinance, all of these are dedicated as low-income units. We also have 2 new single-family homes currently in plan check. And these we assume will be at market rate, so they're above moderate. We have 4 new multifamily units that were approved up on 5th Street, and they are also in plan check and will be presumably above moderate. As you know, the 5 Habitat townhomes are under construction and should be completed fairly soon, and those are all low-income units. And then finally, as you recall, we had the conversion of the Surfside Motel last fall, which approved the creation of 41 apartment units. Of those, 1 would be extremely low income, 8 set aside for low income families, and then 32 would be a market or above moderate rate. Next slide, please. So with regard to, well, basically to sum up, so our general plan, we are well underway, and the staff report goes through on Appendix A how we are currently in compliance with or will be in compliance with the goals within the various elements. With regard to the housing successor agency, Our report was prepared as always by the city's consultant, which is RSG, and our consultant is here to answer any questions this evening. And it describes the city's compliance with the various successor agency expenditures and production requirements. Overall, the report, the findings in the report are similar to last year's, with the exception of the sale of the property that the agency used to own to Habitat for the production of those 5 for sale low-income townhomes. Next slide, please. In summary, the report shows that during the past fiscal year, 1.7 million was deposited into the asset fund. 133,000 of that was spent, and it was all on administrative costs. And this is under the amount that's allowed, which is about 229,000. So we are well under that threshold. The housing asset fund balance is 4.158 million, of which we count that as cash 3.286 million. However, that is counted with regard to our equity and assets that we hold. And then finally, the housing asset fund may not accumulate excessive surplus because we are supposed to be spending the money on providing for new additional affordable housing units. And while we haven't done a whole lot of that with the exception of the Habitat project, which definitely counts towards that, the report shows that we do not have an excessive surplus in our asset fund. And next slide, please. So with that, I am available for any questions. Like I said, if you've got any questions with regard to the successor agency report, Dominique Clark from RSG is available this evening as well. Thank you.
Okay. So I don't see any questions from the council. I just had one comment or question or inquiry. I know I've been reading in the paper that a number of cities throughout California have been concerned regarding the state guidelines for housing and have expressed some concerns, and I guess have moved it forward on a legal front. Are you familiar with any of those, and has staff or council considered those?
Sure. Well, right now, City Attorney Spalding and I are looking into probably the most onerous ones that we've been hearing a lot about, which are SB 9 and 10. They're not part of this particular item, but they are the ones that we're hearing about that allow for up to 4 units to ultimately be constructed on a single family lot. And once we can discuss that a little bit further once we actually bring an item back to you specifically with regard to that. But we don't feel it's actually going to be too much of an issue for the city of Port Hueneme because of the way we're built out in our smaller lots, as it would say for cities like Thousand Oaks or Simi Valley, which have a wide variety of single family homes that can be lots that can be subdivided. Otherwise, yes, we're still working with HCD on actually getting our housing element certified. They asked for a bunch more information. Particularly, they want to know how we're going to basically guarantee how those 125 units are going to be constructed. And while we don't have a crystal ball, we're working with Rincon, our consultants, to put together additional studies for them. And we actually have a conference call of Rincon, Veronica Tam, our housing consultant, and HCD staff this Thursday afternoon to go over what we feel needs to be added to the housing element to satisfy them and get that certified.
Thank you. Councilperson Perez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Stewart, for the presentation. I recall during some of our plan discussions, we were talking about multi-purpose units and developing those in some of our current property shopping centers. For instance, the 99 Center and the proposed downtown area that we're hoping to have. Is that falling into any of the numbers? And is there any movement on any of that, on those items that we approved and discussed?
So yes, those are considered part of the 125, but they're ultimately developed. In fact, it will allow us to exceed the 125 and give us a little bit of cushion there. I'm currently holding off on the actual rezone right now until we get the housing element actually certified by HCD so that we don't have to go back and rezone again or something like that. But we are working on the back end of that, and hopefully, if everything goes right, we'll get that to you this summer.
Okay, with that, there's a recommendation to receive the information provided by staff and any public comment made on the item, and direct the staff to submit the annual report to the California Department of Housing and Community Development and the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. May I have a motion and a second?
Move to approve.
Second.
Second. Madam Clerk, will you please take a roll call vote?
Councilmember Perez,
Yes.
Councilmember Gama,
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Rollins.
Yes. Okay.
Motion passes unanimously.
Great. We will now move on to number 10, City Port Community Benefit Fund Update by Mr. Connors.
Thank you, Mayor, Honorable City Council. I have a brief report I want to share with you tonight. The City Benefit Fund has been a wonderful part of our community over the past 5 years, and it really was showcased really over the past month or so with events like the robotics competition, the Little League grand opening, amenities at Miranda Park, and even Real Guppies doing wonderful work with their audience, young kids looking for options to spend their time and invest in. And so the Community Benefit Fund that we'll talk about tonight is a $65,000 balance that remains in the fund, specifically associated with FY 21 and 22. We approved several projects back in the November, December timeframe, but the two projects that remain are projects that council and the commission or board of supervisors at the port asked to do a little bit more work on and define what those projects look like. The two projects are a monument that was nominated by the port and a art mural that was nominated by our city council. So the port created a ad hoc committee, as did the city, to look at those two projects independently. And those projects were brought back to the Standing Joint Committee recently to review those projects and make a determination as a joint committee to move forward with those projects. So both projects were reviewed, and I'll talk about the museum project first and then move on to the art mural project. The committee for the port, their focus was on monuments associated with the history of our city and the port. They broke down their project into 4 phases. And the first phase, and only the first phase, would be funded here tonight if council approves it. Their project is to honor and recognize the history of the Bard family and the contributions for both the city and the port. And in that project, they will create a bronze statue that is full size of Richard Bard. The preliminary cost, which includes obviously the design, but also the preparation for mold, and then the actual statue, is $50,000. And the identified location that they like to place is at the Hueneme Wharf Plaza. I should also state that the actions here tonight only allocates money to the project, but because of our policy, our cultural heritage policy, our heroes and historic preservation policy, the actual scope, definition, and location of the project needs to go through that process in addition to the funding actions that we would take tonight. The second phase of this concept would be another bronze statue, but it would recognize the collaboration with the military, in particular the Seabees, and also the ILWU that has been legendary in terms of advancing the capabilities of the port. And they would like to place this project on the beach walkway. And that was also assessed as a $50,000 project. Again, this action tonight would not fund phase 2, only phase 1. Phase 3 would be similar. However, this would be completely and totally focused on our Chumash history, and the desired location would be at the Hueneme Beach gazebo. And the last phase, and probably a very important phase, is to support the maintenance of all 3 of these other phases, which includes the bronze statue. I should mention that the commissioners at the Oxnard Harbor District have already approved the concept and the allocation of this fiscal year, $50,000 of community benefit fund for this project. On the city side, we have our public mural. The mural ad hoc committee was activated and developed with Councilmember Hernandez and Mayor Rollins, and identified a process for delivering an art mural and potentially a series of art projects that celebrate the city's history and celebration of our 75th anniversary through artistic rendering of those concepts in various ways. And it's important that I share the concept for this project, very similar to the port's monument. This project would be a storyboard, and you've seen several. There's ones that are in the post office, there's ones over at the port. And it really identifies our most significant historical events and the evolution of the city. So some of those would be recognition of our Chumash Native Americans, contribution of the Barr family that we talked about, the establishment and history of the Navy, the Port of Hueneme and Oxnard Harbor District, the city's evolution, the Alaska 261 crash, and finishing up with our 75th anniversary. It would be located in a visible place where the public could see, access, and experience in vehicles, and especially as they're entering the city. And it could set the stage for more projects to come. The preliminary cost for this specific project is $52,000. As you can see, that's well above the $15,000 that's available for this project and our community benefit fund. And so there would have to be additional work in order to fully fund this project over time. Part of the process would include identifying the site. We have the concept already. Doing muralist outreach. There's proven methods on how to do that. Contracting for the project. Doing community outreach to get their input and participation, and then actually doing the project, and then having a ceremony really for all of these monuments and art components of our community benefit fund initiatives. The current desired location would be on the north wall of the Red Mule facility at the intersection of Hueneme Road and Surfside Drive. And that is the highlights of both projects. And I just want to reiterate that council will only approve funding for the projects and not necessarily the scope, the definition, location of these projects. They would go through a separate process, which would include our Citizen Advisory Commission. We fully recognize that to complete these two projects through completion of all phases will not necessarily be covered with the funding that we'll talk about tonight. And so several separate initiatives would have to occur in order to complete the funding throughout the life cycle of both of these projects. And with that, I rest pending your questions.
Councilperson Gama.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. I think each one of these are worthy of our support. I do have one little criticism, and that is that, you know, the Chumash natives were here long before the port, and they knew what the Bard family figured out. And perhaps they were part of the reason why the Bard family figured out that that location was the perfect spot to launch vessels from, because it was safe. So I would love a little bit of a different iteration where perhaps maybe we could have some kind of canoe monument out at the lighthouse to the Chumash. But our area, this area is complicated by our history, and I just want to make sure that the Chumash have their appropriate spot in all of this. And then I think what I'm hearing is that we would take these on one at a time. Is that correct?
Both projects would move forward simultaneously, subject to the HEROES policy process. And they would exhaust whatever funds are available until it was replenished, either through future community benefit fund allocations or other sources of funding. So they would happen simultaneous.
And then my only other ask would be that in terms of murals, that we research and get all the best materials so it's long lasting in a coastal environment, but to involve the Oxnard Union High School District art departments and you know, give students a chance to create whatever mural is decided on, and so that we could have youth involved in this mural. And I can tell you that there's some extremely talented art teachers and students throughout the Oxnard Union High School District. And so that would be my second ask, is to, when it comes to murals, involve high school students in the creation of them.
And thanks, those are great comments, Councilmember Gama. We do have Councilmember Hernandez and Mayor Rollins here too that had put a lot of work in this, and they may be able to add some additional details about some of the questions you asked.
Would either one of us, would you like to speak first, Councilperson Hernandez?
Well, I was just would agree with Councilman Gama that we do want to engage the youth in this project, and that's going to happen through a community outreach effort. We'd like to see our art students participate, Navy-based volunteers participate, other community members participate. We just, my thoughts was that this would be the actual painting would be done by volunteers under the supervision of a professional muralist. So I like the idea of using our art students. I think it's a great idea. So we'll just have to, it's been discussed. I hope it's, oops, just lost me. Damn it. Are you still there?
Yes.
Okay. It's like, damn it. Like my video went away. So anyway, that's all I had to say.
Welcome to my world tonight.
And I just wanted to kind of reiterate, we're trying to make this process as very much inclusive as possible, because we want the entire community to be proud of the final project. And so we're looking at various different methods to get input, so that perhaps even some of the subject matter of the mural that we presented tonight, there may be some hidden things that are very important to the community that maybe initially we're not aware of, but by the outreach, we're looking to do that to make everything inclusive and involve as much of the history that the community is proud of.
Hey, Mayor, may I add one more component to this this agenda item?
Certainly.
One of the things that council had asked for is to have an opportunity to assemble projects for future consideration and discuss them in a council meeting before those projects were taken to the Joint Committee for Advocacy for the Community Benefit Fund. And I wanted to make sure that if there's any projects that have been thought about or considered, that we offer the time for council members and the public to potentially contribute. We will have a new funding at the end of this fiscal year, at the end of June, and we'll meet back up and approve a new batch of projects. So we do have some time to do that, but I just wanted to make sure I got that out, Mayor. Thank you.
So what, besides perhaps potential projects that we can initially get our thinking caps on, perhaps there's a period of time over the next month or so that, you know, council and the community can present like a kind of a laundry list of different possible things that the council in turn can then approve the priorities. Would that be correct?
Yes, sir. Staff would, Alex, QA to make sure that they meet the settlement agreement requirements. And then we would push them into the web portal that we use for scoring those projects. And we share those with the port, and the port shares any projects that they have nominations for with us through that portal.
And can there be public outreach to the community? I know the council obviously is well aware of what their marching orders are, but can the information go out on the various different public media as far as like to, you know, solicit ideas and possible things?
Yes, of course, and that's a great approach, and we'll get aggressive with that here as we get closer to that time frame where we have new funding for community benefit.
Great, thank you. Okay. There's a recommendation to discuss pending $65,000 of the community benefit project and a recommendation for public art, monument and mural, and to introduce future project recommendations for considering, which we will do, I guess. But I'm going to read the three items. One is to approve the public mural community benefit fund allocation of $15,000 based on the initial design concept project scope, location, cost estimate, and project phasing as a project that is governed by the city's HEROES historic preservation and cultural heritage policy. The final mural project details will be determined and approved separately. Number two, approve the Public Monument Community Benefit Fund allocation of $50,000 based on the initial design concept, project scope, project location, cost estimate, and project phasing as a project that is governed by the city's HEROES historic preservation and cultural heritage policy. The final monument project details will be determined and approved separately. The Oxnard Harbor District Board of Commissioners have already approved this allocation. And finally, number three, consider, recommend, and nominate future community benefit projects, either as a backup for the projects for 2021, 2022, or future fund programming. I'm assuming we can hold off on number three unless there's a plethora of items tonight. So we can approve number 1 and 2, I would think. Am I correct, Mr. Connors?
Yeah, that was an opportunity to introduce any projects tonight. If there are no projects, that is no longer applicable. And just for the record, Mayor, we can accept projects anytime, and we'll bring them back to council.
Okay.
Also, if I might, you know, you may have noticed that the estimate that was developed for the murals was in the $50,000 range. And we only have a $15,000 allocation under this round here of funding. So you can assume rightly that we will be asking for additional funds.
Would you like to
For the
put that
mural.
down? Would you like to put that down as a potential project tonight, or do you want to wait?
Well, it is in a potential project, yes, so,
Okay.
but just one.
Okay, Councilperson Gama.
I was gonna make a motion to approve 1 and 2, and then also ask for an agenda item at the next meeting or the one after, to where we could bring ideas for future projects. I don't know if that will fly tonight, but
You could bring that up on future agenda items, and that might be a good time to do that.
yeah, because I think if we approve 1 and 2, which is my motion, and then we'll have plenty of time to deal with cost increase, I guess would be the way to say it.
Yeah, and any future projects, yes. Okay, good idea.
Well, I wouldn't eliminate number 3 if we're gonna move forward with the mural project.
But number 3 would have to come back as a future request.
Yeah, and it will. Mhm.
Okay, that's why I'm saying this, let's approve 1 and 2, and then 3 will come up when we have it agendized. Or
I don't think it makes a difference, but
Yeah.
let's just move forward.
Okay. So made a motion to approve 1 and 2.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve 1 and 2 with the caveat that we're gonna have with having a future agenda item where we can explore more opportunities. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
May we take a roll call vote?
Councilmember Gama,
Yes.
Councilmember Perez,
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes,
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Mayor Rollins.
Yes. Great.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, we are moving on to number 11, the amended cannabis implementing resolution and application for cannabis lounges. Mr. Stewart, will you make the report?
Yes, thank you and good evening, everybody again. I'll make this fairly brief. As the City Council will recall, back on March 7th, you introduced for first reading the ordinance that was just adopted this evening, which was revising our cannabis ordinance to accommodate cannabis lounges. And what the ordinance did was it basically established allowing lounges here in the city. And during the first reading back on March 7th, we also mentioned to the council that we'd be providing an amended implementing resolution, which would be necessary to clearly state the application and permitting process requirements for cannabis lounges per the ordinance. So what this amended resolution will do is it will require that all proposed cannabis lounges be subject to the standards established by the ordinance and provide certain documents and requirements and information for city staff and the cannabis reviewing committee to use to approve certificates of approval. So based on this, in other words, because we have the ordinance in place, we do need to also amend our implementing resolution as we have done on a couple occasions in the past. And therefore, it is recommended this evening that the City Council adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Port Hueneme, establishing application requirements, minimum qualifications, locational criteria for medicinal and non-medicinal cannabis activity pursuant to Articles 3 and 10 of the Port Hueneme Municipal Code, procedures for the annual review of development agreements pursuant to Government Code Section 65865.1, and procedures for change in ownership and transfer of an interest in cannabis businesses. And again, this is to basically include the requirements for applications for cannabis lounges. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Do we have any questions? I read the report and I saw something that varied a little bit from, I know, the discussion we had last time. The discussion that we had last time was that we were going to limit it to existing cannabis lounges to be, existing cannabis companies to be able to pursue a cannabis lounge. And I think I read in the report that it also included anybody who met the requirements. Can you clarify that a little bit?
Sure, and City Attorney Spalding can also correct me if I'm wrong, but the bottom line is, today we have a certain number of cannabis dispensaries already operating and a couple more coming online. And we have a cap for those. We also today, with this ordinance that you just approved, have a cap for 5. But down the road, we may have openings that come up because businesses fold or whatever, where we'll have new cannabis dispensaries potentially coming online, as well as the potential for new lounges to come online in conjunction with those dispensaries. So we just want to cover basically all of our bases between now and the indeterminate future.
So I didn't read it specifically, but is there going to be a tie-on where you need to have a cannabis dispensary to have a cannabis lounge, or can you apply for them independently?
No, you would need to have an established dispensary. And a couple of reasons why, again, is because we know who the dispensary operators are at this point. So it gives us that comfort level with regard to how the lounges will be operated. Also, the requirement for gaining entitlements is that all of these dispensaries already have their certificates of approval, conditional use permits, as well as development agreements in place. And so the planning entitlement for these is that they first will go through the certificate of approval modification process. And that's really what this cannabis implementing resolution pertains to. And they will modify their existing certificates of approval associated with their dispensaries to accommodate the lounge operations. And then they'll come back to you for final approval of their applications to modify their CUPs and their development agreements. But again, this all has to be tied into an existing dispensary.
Okay, great. Okay, so without any further questions from council, the recommendation is to adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Port Hueneme, California, establishing application requirements, minimum qualifications, locational criteria for medicinal and non-medical cannabis activities pursuant to Articles 3 and 10 of the Port Hueneme Municipal Code, procedures for annual review of the development agreements pursuant to the Government Code Section 65865.1, and the procedures for the change in ownership or transfer of an interest in the cannabis businesses. May I have a motion and a second?
Move to approve.
Second.
Second. May we have a vote? Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Perez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Councilmember Gama,
Yes.
Mayor Rollins.
Yes. Very good. Number 12, renewal and reconsideration of remote meetings pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E. City Attorney, Mr. Spalding.
Thank you, Mayor Rollins and honorable council members. As was discussed a little bit earlier in the meeting, that this AB 361 renewal would be coming forward. Many of you have done this, or all of you have done this numerous times. And so basically the background is that the council is being asked to make one of 2 findings in order to continue remote meetings if that is the desired goal of council. The first finding would be the state of emergency continues to directly impact the ability of the members to meet safely in person, or that the state or local officials continue to impose or recommend measures to promote social distancing. To reiterate Mr. Matalon's presentation earlier tonight, the March 4th, 2020 of emergency remains in effect despite the mask mandate being lifted. In addition, the public health officer for Ventura County, Dr. Levin, has not rescinded his September 21st, 2021 letter indicating that social distancing measures are still recommended. In fact, the most recent correspondence from Dr. Levin indicates that all precautions should continue to be taken, including mask wearing when in public, when in enclosed spaces. The distinction in the staff report that I like to point out is, given the lead time on staff reports, they invariably contain information that is not current. So at the end of the staff report, you can see that there were 363 new COVID cases at a 7-day average of 9.3 per 100,000 within the county. We now know that that case rate has declined to 5.4. And in addition, at the time the staff report was written, there were 5 persons in the ICU. There were 8 persons in the ICU. Now there are only 5. And so I believe Mr. Madelon covered quite extensively what the state of the county is with respect to coronavirus infection. To touch on one of the comments earlier, or some of the discussion earlier with respect to the city name change and the public hearings that are scheduled for that, the first public hearing is scheduled for this Friday on March 25th. The public hearings require 21 days notice prior to the public hearing. The city has already issued and posted its public hearing notice and has identified that the meeting would take place in Zoom. So if the council's direction would be to go back to in-person meetings, my recommendation would be to begin with the first meeting in April. And with that, I yield to any questions the council may have.
Okay, Councilperson Gama.
I'd like to make a motion to go back to in-person meetings, and I imagine 2 weeks from now would be the first week of April, and leaving the Friday meeting as a Zoom meeting.
Mayor, before we get too far into this item, I just wanted to ask the city clerk, I believe that she is in receipt of a written public comment on this item.
Okay, can we have the public comment, please?
We do have one written comment that was received on this item, and I will read it. I would like to encourage the city council to vote in approval of in-person city council meeting and suggest the public hearing being held the Friday to discuss changing the name of the city to be in person as well. Many council members attended an indoor event over the weekend of what looks close to 100 people in the photos shared on Facebook. In these photos, 4 out of 5 of our council members are shown both on stage and socializing. In over a dozen photos, not one council member is wearing a mask. In fact, only one person from the photos of that event was wearing a mask. So I'm not sure why city council meetings are not public, yet many of the council members are not participating in in-person public events without masks. Seems very hypocritical to attend indoor public gatherings, yet opposed to indoor public gatherings, which is an obligation to our public. I support doing both in public and Zoom, so anyone who does not want to attend can participate as well. Public participation in city council meetings seems to be at an all-time low. The last meeting literally had one public comment, and it wasn't even about an issue on the agenda. Let's get the public more involved. I don't see how city council can represent the public if they object to public participation. Zoom is not accessible to everyone, has many security flaws, and public comments have been dismissed in previous city council meetings and were not read at all or read at inappropriate times, such as the end of the meeting. Thank you for your time, Ricardo Holden. That was the only written comment that I received.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion. We have a motion to go back to regular meetings, and with the exception of this coming Friday, which would be a Zoom meeting. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second by Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Martinez. Discussion. Okay.
Wait.
Okay.
Give me
I didn't see your hand. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think it's time we go back, but I just, in light of Mr. Madelon's presentation, there is still a risk out there. And the fact that we can't social distance in the city council chambers is still an issue. Being out in public like the barbecue event, that's a little different because you have to be next to a person for an extended period of time, at least 15, 20 minutes in order to contract something. And in that situation, I don't think we were next to each other for that length of time. In a city council meeting, you're sitting next to each other for hours. And if we're not going to be required to wear masks and we can't social distance, it is risky. And considering that we have a new variant that is taking place in UK, and we're known, the United States is traditionally follows the trends of the UK in terms of infection rates. So I think I'll vote to go back into city council chambers, but I think we need to be the mindset that we need to be prepared to go back to Zoom when things change, if things change.
Okay, Councilperson Gama.
Yeah, I was at the event this weekend and I think it started at 12:30. I think we were done at 2:45 and we sat next to people. We didn't have masks and I didn't see anybody freaking out or having a problem. So I think it's time to go back into in-person meetings. And just like we heard earlier, if you want to wear a mask, nobody's going to discourage anyone from wearing a mask. But I just think it's time. So with that, we have a motion and a second.
We're still in public, a council comment. Councilperson Perez.
I just have a comment just for the record, in case anybody thinks otherwise. I'm not afraid of going back to the council chambers. I don't have an issue with the COVID. I just would like our meetings not to be until 11 o'clock at night and make me more comfortable of having to sit in the council chamber. That's my issue with it, is our long meetings. So if we can make it an excellent, honest effort to try to keep our council meetings as short as possible, I won't have an issue with it. I just don't want to be there until after 10 and keep our staff there that late.
Okay. I would also like these meetings to be as efficient as possible, but it's still allowing for the council to provide their input and then for providing the public to provide their input. I'd never want to negate that opportunity for us to do that. But at the same time, I think in the spirit of us keeping our comments concise and to the point, I think is well taken. And then I also would like, I recently went to a Port Hueneme education board meeting where I saw a number of people in the public going to that meeting. They were wearing masks, but they did meet in person. And these were families and adults, children. So I think the time has come. So with that, we have a motion by Councilperson Gama and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Martinez. May we have a roll call vote on that? And that is to go back to Zoom meetings and then also, with the exception of this Friday meeting.
I think you misstated it, Mayor Rollins.
Okay, then what part did I misstate?
You said we voting to go back to Zoom meetings.
I'm sorry, you're correct. Going back to in-person meetings. And
As of April 1st, right?
As of April 1st. And and obviously with the caveat that if things turn to a negative situation, we always have the ability, Mr. Connors, to have a special meeting to change that if things went radically negative and sicknesses and deaths and all that went way up. Am I
Don't be
correct?
negative, be positive.
No, I do want to be positive, but I also want us to know that we are not stuck with this if in case we are flexible, and that's what a good council should be. So moving, we have a motion and a second. May we have a vote?
Councilmember Gama,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perez,
Yes.
Mayor Rollins.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, great. So at this point in time, we have the city manager comments and reports.
Thank you, Mayor Rollins, Honorable City Council. Based on a couple of emails, frequent emails I get about a couple of capital projects that seem to be high interest areas and very favorable and long awaited, I may add. I want to spend this time in giving updates on these two primary projects and maybe some others in the future. The first one is the dog park, which has also now been conjoined into a potential community garden with it, and the play equipment on the beach. Both of these projects were funded in ARPA in December. The beach equipment or play equipment is well down the mature path of a design. We have a concept with a lot of details that are also going to be accessible to people to take a look at and participate in. Our beach event that we did outreach was canceled mainly because of high winds. But all the materials that we would have used on the beach, and we're going to do another public event, are available at the library. So you can look at what the project is, at least the initial design concept, and participate in improving what that design is. The other project we've done the site work for at Bubbling Springs is the dog park, and that'll be in the design phase as well. So those things are moving forward. And I'll give updates every council meeting on those two projects primarily. One other event that ties into one of the projects that we approved in ARPA is a skate park. We are doing a coordination, and it's still in work, for pop-up skate parks at all of our parks to see what the interest area is and the accessibility is for people, especially our younger youth skaters, for the optimal location for that skate park. So I'll keep updates on that as well. One of the things that the mayor and I participated in last week, we were solicited by Supervisor Ramirez's staff to talk about ARPA funding. Now, we already exhausted our $5.2 million of ARPA funding, but the county has $164 million. And Supervisor Ramirez is very interested in reaching out to her district, predominantly Port Hueneme and Oxnard, and identify areas where we could fund certain projects that have a regional focus. And so a couple of the themes that we talked about was the trash, silt, and other debris patterns associated with Ormond Lagoon. That's obviously a very big focus area for our council members and our community. We do Saturday beach cleanups, and we do large events 4 or 5 times a year, where we've collected somewhere between 6 to 8 tons of debris and trash, not to mention the impacts to our wildlife. So that was a big focus area for Supervisor Ramirez and her staff, and we contributed to making that a priority in their ARPA discussions. The other thing we talked about is homeless housing and services. We have our homeless issues here in the city, but a lot of it is regionally oriented, which impacts both Oxnard and Port Hueneme. So they will look into areas in that particular focus area for part of their ARPA funding. We also talked about the grants that we were in play for at Boker Park and Bubbling Spring Parks that we did not compete and win. And so we talked about potential ARPA funding to go back into those parks that we didn't have an opportunity to fund all the projects that we identified in our grant applications. And then we talked to a lesser degree, but an important degree, about beach sand replenishment through dredging projects, both with the Channel Islands Harbor District as well as port dredging. We did receive notification through legislative channels through Congresswoman Brownlee's office that $12 million had been applied to one of those projects and approved. And I also got feedback from the port that their dredging project has $5 million associated with it for a total package of somewhere around $15 million. All of that dredging and all that, those corrections at both of those areas ultimately result on sand on our beach. And those are clearly areas that we not only support, but we're always advocating for with our partners, our stakeholders, and in particular the fund holders and the Army Corps of Engineers and the Navy. So those are the big themes from that meeting, and there's some minor other things. I have two more items. Part of our Heroes, Heritage, and History policy designates an opportunity each year to identify a Hueneme hero. And so we are accepting nominations for your Hueneme hero, somebody who's been performing extraordinary service in terms of quality of life or advocacy for programs or community support that makes all of our lives better. And so we want to make sure that we start, just like community benefit fund projects, reaching out and make sure that the best of the best in terms of this past year is recognized at our annual beach festival in August. And then finally, if you were paying attention to Mr. Kenny's brief, the city turns 74 this Thursday. So happy birthday, city at Fort Wayne. And with that, I turn it back over to you, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. We are now moving on to council member reports and comments. And we will start first with Councilperson Gama.
Thank you, Mayor Rollins. So this last week I attended a LGBTQ event at Hueneme High School, listened to the story of Jessica Lynn. Mayor Rollins was with me, and it was quite the story. It was very informative, and she told her life story from beginning till current present day. And she presented to the entire student body at Hueneme High School in 2 separate days. And I learned a lot, and I think it was very important for kids to be informed about the differences of us humans. And I think Jessica Lynn did an extraordinary job in doing that. And interesting enough, more than about half of the students were wearing masks, maybe even a little more. And none of the adults were wearing masks. And so it just seems like, I don't know, just, even though the mask mandate has been lifted for schools, it seems like it's kind of a slow rollback. But it was a really nice event to attend, and I'm really glad I went. This past Friday, we had the Beacon meeting, and as city manager just reported, we are thrilled that we have an increase in funding. However, with the increase in funding, we do want to focus on sand and how much sand, and make sure we're well prepared to utilize all those dollars to move the maximum amount of sand. And one of the things that we've been working on over the last 3 years through our sand summits, through Beacon, is making sure everybody's on the same page in regards to the problem that we have here in sustaining Hueneme Beach. And in order to be sustained, we need to get 1.2 million cubic yards of sand moved around the corner per year, or 2.4 million cubic yards of sand every biannual dredge process. And at the meeting, it was super insightful to hear from the Natural Resources Land and Wetland Program Manager, Miss Valerie Vartanian. And it was great because the numbers that she was citing are the exact numbers that we're aware of, and that the county's aware of, the port's aware of. And so we're all on the same page in terms of what it takes to mimic Mother Nature. And that's what the dredging project is all about, is mimicking Mother Nature and moving the amount of sand that would have normally moved by itself around the corner to sustain Hueneme Beach. So in the coming months, we are looking to having another sand summit, and making sure everybody's involved, and making sure that we have some input into the upcoming dredge process. One of the things that I think is important is to try and influence the Army Corps and the people that make that project come to life to fill in and eliminate Hueneme Lake. It creates a life safety issue for our lifeguards. Saltwater mosquitoes could breed and the water gets nasty. And so hopefully we'll be able to do that with this increased funding. So I'm really happy about that. And had one other thing. It's escaped from me now. If it comes back to me, I'll reclaim my time. Thank you.
Councilperson Perez.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me? My mic seems to be in and out.
Perfectly now, a little bit lower earlier, but perfectly now.
Okay, so I have a couple of updates. My husband and I, along with others, attended the Medal of Valor presentation at the Reagan Library for, they gave awards to law enforcement all over the community, and our own detective, Balti Tapia, received the Medal of Valor for investigator. So that was a nice event. Heard a lot of heroic stories, and it was a beautiful ceremony. NAMI event took place on Saturday. We had close to 100 attendees. We have commitments coming up from multiple agencies about different events they're going to have throughout the month of May. So be looking towards that. Our own Hueneme PD will be doing the same, Coffee with a Cop, and I'm not sure what else, but at least that. Good food, good communication, and community outreach there. SCAG, Community Economic and Human Development Committee, I attended. Not much in terms of anything helpful for us. It was all about pretty much modular homes and how they are, the benefits of building modular homes versus other types of construction. I attended a VCLA meeting last week at the Food Share of Ventura County and got a tour, very informative tour of Food Share, and spoke to the president and a couple of the other members there. And I'm looking hopefully to do a Food Share pop-up again, and they're looking for another location. So we're looking in the area. Mr. Connors is looking to see if we can put a permanent rotation for a Food Share pantry in Hueneme at some place. So that is in the works, and hopefully we can find a nice location, maybe Bolker Park or Mary's Market or the Pavilion. And they need a nonprofit. So our Frank Montalongo and our explorers are interested in being the host for that.
Thank you. Councilperson Hernandez.
Thank you, Mayor Rollins. I just wanted to share with the council that both Councilman Gama and I provided testimony 2 weeks ago, I think, yeah, before the Regional Water Quality Board. Our testimony was about supporting the call to action from the Surf Riders Foundation regarding cleaning up of Ormond Beach. And the board was quite receptive to our comments, and I'm hoping that they helped encourage action as far as Ormond Beach is concerned. I also attended the Medal of Valor ceremony last Saturday night, and wanted to offer my congratulations to Detective Tapia for his accomplishments and his bravery. It was really a great ceremony. I saw a few other people there who received awards that I knew, and I was glad to be a part of that. Thank you, Councilman Gama, for your report on Beacon. I look forward to working with you on the Sand Summit. I also attended as the district representative of District 45, the SCAG district representative. We had a joint meeting between Ventura and Santa Barbara County. It was very well attended, and we covered a number of issues, and I'll be happy to share the report in the council office. I wasn't able to download it and give you details here today. I also wanted to ask about communication that I received from a gentleman who's trying to start a recycling center at the corner of Channel Islands and Ventura Road. And I would just wanted to ask staff if they could let me know what municipal ordinance provisions we have that would prevent him from doing that. I know what we used to have one at Mary's Market. And I personally have some concerns about another recycling center popping up in that particular location. I just wanted to be able to respond to the individual who's inquiring about this. So maybe Mr. Stewart can help with that. And I'd be happy to forward you that email, Mr. Stewart. And also, I just wanted to remind everybody that April 19th, next month, will be the ceremony and the dedication of the bicycle repair station for Pedro Valdez. I understand that the bicycle station has been ordered and we still need to work on a plaque. So I hope Councilman Martinez and I will be able to work on that together. Make sure that plaque is ready in time for the presentation. And then finally, I wanted to ask that we adjourn in honor of Women's History Month, which is in March. And we are celebrating the contributions of women to our community. So if we could adjourn in honor of Women's History Month, I would much appreciate it. And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Council Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
No update, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. I just a little, it has already been mentioned, I attended the high school presentation and what really impressed me was the acceptance of the high school kids. You were listening to them, they were intently listening to the program. And I guess that gives me a positive feeling for the future of people being able to accept people's differences and uniquenesses. The REACH meeting, we now have officially an executive director, Maya Zumaya. We officially approved that. And we're looking forward as we move forward to do some exciting events for the community. For those who may have tried to get onto our REACH website, they had some problems that occurred, but now the REACH website is up and at 'em. And so you can look onto the REACH site to see the various different programs and events that we are involved in, will be involved in. For those of you who are aware of the BRIC program, they have a new agreement now so that we'll be able to put people who want to have bricks remembering their loved ones or any other kind of recognition. You'll be able to do that on a regular basis, and there'll be the bricks will be put on. In the past, we've been doing it like maybe once or twice a year, and now we're going to be able to do it perhaps once a month if there's interest in that. So that's a great thing. From the Ventura County Air Pollution Board, we're losing what has been a very professional and good advocate to air pollution prevention, Lucky Tisopoulos. He is going to be moving on, and we're going to be, I'm going to be involved in recruiting and hiring the new person to fill that void. And I know he's come out and made presentations to us in the past, and has had Port Hueneme in his mind as far as when we had some issues with various different concerns regarding the air quality. And that's about it. Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor Rollins. You know what? I think I do have a couple things to report. So the robotics competition was really a really good experience. I think I did all right on my speech for it being my first time representing the city, and just know that I'm only going to get better. And then I also want to mention that the 3-point contest at Miranda Park that was held 2 weekends ago was really fun and exciting. We had about 12 people participate in the event, and then we had about another 20 people that were watching, and it was pretty cool. So stay tuned for the next event. It'll be on the third Sunday of each month, the 3-point contest at Miranda Park from 9 in the morning to 11:30. And so I'm thinking that the third Sunday of each month will be easy to remember since it's a 3-point contest. So the third, and that's about it.
I like that. Okay. Councilperson Gama.
Thank you. I'm sorry to tune up a little more time, but at our Beacon meeting, the Ventura County Board of Realtors have an association, and they created an organization called Smart Coast, and it's an organization dedicated to getting involved in protecting our coastline, and so really, really excited about that. One of the main inspirations for the group is Marta Brown, and she's right here in Ventura County. So that's a really good news that we get other people involved in protecting our coastline. And again, I just wanted to mention that real quickly, and that'll do it.
Okay.
Oh, one other thing, sorry. Our trash effort, I'm really glad to know that that the County Board of Supervisors are looking at capture devices. I know they're widely used up in the Seattle area. We continue to get volunteers from Oxnard, and so I want to give a shout out to the Seroptimus Club of Oxnard. They're a group of wonderful ladies that have come out 2 or 3 times now. They were out this past weekend, and we're continuing to keep our beach clean. And I think it's a good thing. And the amount of trash is mind-boggling that we've removed. So thank you to everyone that participates, and thank you, Carmen Ramirez, for giving us attention. We appreciate it.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Martinez, your hand's still up, but you don't have any more things to say, do you, or do you? Okay, great. So now we'll be moving on to the final part of our meeting, the request for future agenda items. Do we have any? Councilman Perez.
Yes, I would like to get a staff update on the class and comp study.
Okay. I will second that. Can we have a vote on that?
Councilmember Perez,
Yes.
Mayor Rollins,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Councilmember Gama.
Yes.
Okay.
I have one other. Can I get a update on the CIP project list? We haven't seen that in a long time.
Okay. We have a motion.
Second.
Second. Can we have a vote on that?
Councilmember Perez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Councilmember Gama,
Yes.
Mayor Rollins.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Councilperson Gama.
Yes, I would like to have on the next agenda the Community Benefit Fund requests for the next fiscal year beginning on July 1, 2022.
Do you have a second?
Okay.
Can we have a vote?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the second. Who did the second?
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
Councilmember Gama,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perez, Mayor Rollins.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
I got one other request. I would like to be briefed on our budget. We're coming up on that time where we should have our new budget in place, and I just want to know how we're doing on that.
So a quarterly budget update, is that what you're asking? Okay, so,
Sure, an update on the budget.
so we have a second vote?
Councilmember Gama,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perez,
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Rollins.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
I would like to have a report on what was previously brought up, the any mitigations or any report on the traffic at the Boca Channel Islands, and any kind of plans that are going to be used to address some of the concerns.
Seconded.
Can we have a vote?
Mayor Rollins,
Yes.
Councilmember Gama,
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. And the last one that I would have, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a report, but perhaps from the city manager, we approved, and it kind of apropos to our conversations tonight, we approved funding for the ability to do hybrid Zoom meetings. And to afford the opportunity for people both in person and outside to be able to provide input to the various council agenda items that we have. So just an update as to where we are. We've already approved it.
Second that.
Can we have a vote?
Mayor Rollins,
Yes.
Councilmember Perez,
Yes.
Councilmember Gama,
Yes, and it could be included in the city manager's comments, so.
Sure.
Yeah.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
Yes.
So it is now 9:21. And with without any further ado, I am going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor Rollins, we want to close the meeting in honor of Women's Month.
Thank you for that. Yes, we want to close the meeting in front of Women's Month and all the contributions women have made in our community and the world for many, many ages.
Yes, here, here.
Here, here.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Here, here, and bye-bye. Thank you, women, for making our world wonderful.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
I'm gonna let my wife know that we made that. Thank you. Okay. Good night.